All right, folks. How's everyone doing? We'll wait for Rodney and Jack to join us, and then we will hear an account at 4. I think. How you doing, Michael? How's things going? Robert Grice, how you doing? Hope you're doing well. I'll tell you what, that was a pretty good show tonight. Not to have just a wing in it to go with it. That's pretty much the truth there, Charles. That was pretty much the truth. You know, you never know. Sometimes on your especially if you're watching on Facebook will, for some reason, will drop that thing down to like 700, sometimes 400, and you have to restart your computer, and then sometimes it may just be us. We just can't get there somehow. By the way, we're waiting for Rodney and Jack. It doesn't look like they're going to make it on here for some reason, but. Yeah, Charles, that's does Shane McMahon fit in the WWE future? You know, I don't know that he wants to be. You know, he quit years ago because he didn't like the comedy aspect of the wrestling. He was very upset. He was very, very upset when they did that little thing that he does, that I don't know, that underground thing, and they made it a joke. He was under the impression it was going to be real, that it was going to be a real like MMA deal, and they just turned it into a joke. So I don't know that he really wants to be. It is clear now. Good deal. Good deal. All right, here's Rodney.
Yeah, I had to go through the link for whatever reason. Everybody else saw the other. Just Jack's on the other. Could you have him? Maybe I can text him real quick, because we're over on the other one, and this is not coming up, but now it's coming up. I had to go through the other thing over there. Let me get him real quick.
Sorry, I missed most of the last podcast. Well, we were just complaining, as Charles said, we were just complaining about Vince McMahon. Hey guys, you ever going back to your old school reviews, WCW, Mid South, and Continental? Yes, we will eventually go back to them. We just had to get away from them. When in the summertime, and especially the springtime, I stay so busy that it's hard for me to actually watch all the shows. So yes, we are going to get it back to them. We're also going to. We're going to be looking for in somewhere down the line. We're going to be looking for some people who might want to assist us in that, and maybe some of you might help us. Richard Hood said, "Oh no, not Vince." There he comes.
We're here eating Werther's candy and having a good time.
Yeah. Kevin Penley, was he on here?
Yes.
Are you over here? Is he one of the subscribers over here? Yes. He asked a question I would like to have.
Well, I don't know if Kevin Penley is one of our supporters or not. I don't think he is.
Well, he had a question over there about what I would do first. First thing I would do. And number one for me, if I was going to do the WWE, is you simply have to have a number one wrestler. This idea of having a Universal Champion and a WWE Champion is nonsense. It dilutes the title. You've got to have a number one wrestler. That's number one, and it would take a while to get there, but it would get there, and I believe pay off in the end. Secondly, you've got to do hour shows leading up to Raw and SmackDown too. So when Raw and SmackDown comes on, you're not building the show through the 3 hours. The show's set, every match is set, so you've already done that in a prior show that's played through the week. It's kind of like the old deal of you have the TV show on, say, on a Saturday, and then you have the house show on the week, later in the week at a night. And that's exactly how I would start to make the changes myself.
Oh, and get away from comedy. That would be very.
Yeah. And like I said, those shows would be primarily all in-ring stuff. You would not see you wouldn't see any build up, or you wouldn't see about a lot of interviews at all. It would just be playing just wrestling, and then they would come back through the week, and they would have another like an hour show kind of reviewing what happened and setting up for the next week, and all the interviews and all the talk would be for that show even happens.
How's it going, guys? From Rick Brooks. Everything's going all right so far. Who knows, though? We could make somebody mad tomorrow, so we never know. Let's see. Terrence Hardy is with us as well. Hey, how you doing, Terrence?
Hey, the boxing guy Brian is on here.
Let's see. Our son and me were watching the WWE Monday Night Raw, and he said they need to get rid of those monitors. They're being rerun. I don't understand.
Talking about the audience monitors? Is that what you're talking about?
I think he's talking about, yeah. But I can't think they are. Isn't July the last of that?
Well, last night was the last pay-per-view without a live crowd. I'm not sure. I think it is 2 more weeks, and they move to live tapings.
Robert Grice said, I thought the WWE Grand segments were good. I thought they were good until they started making jokes of it. I mean, It just became a comedy routine. It was. I don't think Shane was happy about that at all.
I saw Strowman apparently with his beard shaved off, and I understand why he had it on.
Yep.
Oh boy.
Let's see. Otis also shaved his beard completely off,
and got a haircut.
Now he looks like a chubby Gomer Pyle.
Rodney, keep your composure tonight.
We'll try. We are doing. What are we doing tonight?
1977, the War of Memphis, Part 5.
Okay.
World Championship.
And also the top 10 things that ticked Rodney off.
I just saw 3 monitors, the same person on it.
It's possible. They send me. I had signed up. I was going to sign up for the WWE, and I just couldn't bring myself to pay for that. So the WWE Network, and I just couldn't bring myself to pay for that. But I gave them all the information. So I get an email telling me, if you want to be a part of the audience, it's time to sign up now. I should do that and do our show at the same time.
Yeah.
But I'm not a member. I didn't join.
Boxing guy Brian the Bear. Hey, yeah, that's Brian Young, by the way. That's his YouTube name. Let's go ahead. Let's do the World Champion Series first. Let's get that one done first, and then we'll go to this next one while y'all are reading through that.
All right. Rodney, I'll get pages 1 and 2.
Oh, okay.
All right, and then I'm going to drop myself out of there because I'm going to just throw some video pictures and stuff in there anyway during that time. So I'm going to drop out of there, and I gotta look and see what I'm supposed to be talking about on this thing. Once I open it up, I'll drop it out. I'll drop out. All right. Going in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pro Wrestling Inside and Out and our World Champion Series. Well, folks, the world title situation kind of gets crazy once again. And Jack, I think you're going to start us out on this this crazy World Championship title picture.
We start out with our 9th World Champion, Ed Strangler Lewis. On Monday, December 13th, 1920, Ed Strangler Lewis won the first of 6 World Heavyweight Wrestling Championships from Joe Stecher. The fact he won the title from his biggest rival and business enemy must have been particularly satisfying. A year before this match, Stecher and Lewis met in a match lasting over 3 hours. Lewis made a mental error in rushing for Stecher, who was reeling from one of Lewis's headlocks. Lewis tried to pounce on him, but was caught off guard and thrown for a fall. Lewis trained for over a year with the intent of not being caught unaware by Stecher or losing due to fatigue. In the rematch, Lewis beat Stretcher after 1 hour and 41 minutes. Lewis ground Stretcher into defeat with his powerful side headlock. Lewis used a carotid artery choke down in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a bulldog choke, but it was outlawed, so he developed the headlock. While mat finishes were mostly prearranged at this time, Lewis and Stretcher legitimately detested each other. At the time, cooperation was impossible between the two men. Later in their careers, they would wrestle in prearranged bouts. After Lewis defeated Stretcher, he formed what was known as the Gold Dust Trio promotion with Billy Sandow and Toots Mont. They permanently transitioned professional wrestling to work storylines with prearranged finishes. They were comfortable with this new arrangement because if someone did not go along with the storyline, Lewis could beat them for real. This practice would bite them in 1925 when they put the belt on a football player named Big Wayne Munn. By this time, the industry had begun a gradual shift towards works, and Stanislaus Zbyszko was eventually recruited back to the U.S. by the Gold Dust Trio. Now, though in his early 40s, Zbyszko was booked to defeat Lewis for the world title on May 6, 1921, but his reign was ultimately a bust at the box office, and he relinquished the title back to Lewis on March 3, 1922. Around this time, a disagreement caused Joe Stecher to split from the Gold Dust Trio promotion, thus forming a separate wrestling faction. Zbyszko remained with the trio, who were promoting ex-football player Wayne Munn as a charismatic new champion. His fame from playing football attracted the attention of wrestling star Ed Lewis, promoters Mont and Sandow, who prematurely pushed Munn as the next big star in the sport. Munn won the world title from Lewis on January 8, 1925, despite his limiting wrestling and shooting ability. When the match started, it truly didn't seem like Munn could beat Lewis. Munn had the brute strength, but Lewis was clearly the better wrestler. Yet whenever Lewis would apply a hold, Munn would muscle out of it. Even the patented headlock did not work. To fans' astonishment, the former football player held his own throughout the match, utilizing a signature football tackle before lifting Lewis high into the air and slamming him to the mat, pinning his shoulders for the first fall at 21 minutes. Soon after, the two locked up again. This time, Munn lifted Lewis high in the air and dumped him outside the ring. The crowd was stunned. None of this seemed possible against the great Lewis, but here it was happening right in front of their eyes. The referee gave the second fall to Lewis, claiming that Munn illegally threw his opponent out of the ring. Sandow pleaded with the ref to end the match and make Lewis the victor. This was illegal, he argued, and his wrestler was injured. The referee didn't oblige, but gave Lewis 15 minutes to rest before he could come back. And come back he did. Again, feigning the injury, Munn quickly lifted Lewis, slammed him again to the mat, and won in less than a minute. The crowd was ecstatic. They had been rooting for the good-looking football player to defeat the predictable champion and had gotten their money's worth. Lewis was hospitalized, and there was word he may never wrestle again. The Gold Dust Trio had solved two problems. They figured out a way to get Munn over, despite his lack of wrestling acumen, and they figured out a way for Munn to lose in a way that wasn't a clean victory. They didn't count on problem number 3, though, Stanislaus Zbyszko. Munn would go on a championship tour, defeating Mont himself, along with Mike Romano, Pat McGill, Wallace Dugald, and Stanislaus Zbyszko. Of all of them, the 46-year-old Zbyszko was the most talented, although on the older side. Zbyszko was a strong wrestler, 5 feet 8 inches tall and 260 pounds. The king of Poland, spoke 12 languages, and had a law degree from the University of Vienna. But his one true love was wrestling. He was a gifted man. He could have done anything else, said wrestling historian John Rauer. He could have been a politician. He could have been a lawyer. He could have been a judge. But he loved the sport of pro wrestling.
Wow. Zbyszko was one of Munn's first title defenses and lost to the big man on February 11th on that year in 2 straight falls, lasting less than 30 minutes total. He later picked up a rematch on April the 15th. During that time, the New York Times reported on Lewis's condition, as well as the court battle between Lewis and Munns, which was likely entirely planned. Lewis refused to surrender the belt and argued the match was wrestled under protest. Munn, meanwhile, was living the life. The same month he won the belt, the Nebraska House voted to honor him for his victory. He received a $100,000 offer to tour Europe. In a publicity stunt, Munn, the untrained grappler, taught 1,000 students at Harvard how to wrestle. All of this was building up to the rematch with Lewis. On the day Munn had his second bout with Zbyszko, all seems to be going well. Zbyszko agreed to lose again, and the match would boost Munn's prestige going into the Lewis fight. But when the time came, they stood across from one another, and Zbyszko reported smile and said to Munn, "Tonight we wrestle." I'm liking this a lot. It was a disaster. Zbyszko legitimately pinned. Oh, shades! Can you feel the shades of Goldberg here? Oh, wow. It was a disaster. Zbyszko legitimately pinned Munn in practically every way possible. The referee, who was in on the finish, refused to count, but the fans noticed and screamed for a pin. After the first fall, Munn's manager had to think quick. He claimed that the wrestler was sick with the acute tonsillitis and tried to talk Zbyszko and the State Athletic Commission into allowing Munn's sparring partner to finish the match, but it was to no avail. There was nothing the referee could do. Either he would count the falls and reveal the work, or he would have to count or reveal the work. After mere minutes, Zbyszko defeated Munn, took the title, and left the former football player without even his dignity. The match took place on April 15th, 1925 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Munn was spoiled by the greatest double cross in the history of professional wrestling, Raw said. There may have been more devious double crosses, but not on such of a large national scale, and not in such a towering personality involving as Zbyszko and Lewis. Part of the problem was pride. Zbyszko and others objected to the fact that a non-wrestler won the championship belt. I'm with him on that. To them, whoever held the title had to be respected by their peers. Munn, the football star, wasn't. Fans didn't know what to think. Why couldn't this man who handily defeated Ed Lewis hold his own against Zbyszko? It was a major blow to Munn's ego, his reputation, and his business. That exposed him, Chapman says. As easy as Zbyszko whipped him, it was tough to talk that away. What followed was a series of negotiation and fight before Lewis finally legitimately brought the belt back to the trio's hands. Lewis again fought Munn, this time defeating him easily. Munn's star was no longer on the rise. Had Wayne Munn been born 100 years later, he could have been the next Rock. But in 1920s, in the world of real wrestling, he would never be the same again. The Goldust Trio used him, and they made some good money. But when he wasn't drawing for them anymore, he left the business. As for professional wrestling, it kept evolving. Characters became more prevalent, as did the ideas of heel and babyface, bad guy and good guy. The rivalries, the rematch. Munn's reign as champion was largely forgettable, but his impact was still felt. That did, for all intended purposes, change the game overnight, Chapman said. Zbyszko had secretly accepted a payoff from Tony Stretcher, Joe's brother and manager, to switch to their company. Consequently, Zbyszko betrayed the trio by turning the match with Munn into a legitimate shoot, pinning the non-wrestler again and again until the referee was forced to award the title to the 47-year-old veteran who dropped the title to Stetcher a month later on March the 30th, 1925, to complete the ploy. This was one of the last times the world title changed hands legitimately, and the legacy of the conspiracy was momentous, as it would be decades before promoters would ever feel comfortable putting their title on a non-wrestler again. Joe Stetcher would keep the title to February the 21st, 1928. And so, to keep up with the champions, and here's the list. The 9th one, Ed Lewis. 10th one, Zbyszko, of course, Stan Zbyszko. 11th, Ed Lewis. 12th was just champion. 13th champion was Zbyszko. And number 14 was Joe Stetcher. So there we have it. 12th one was a mystery man.
Well, I probably just it was probably there. I just probably
that was supposed to be Munn. Was that supposed to be
Munn? Yes, I think
that was the Munn who ended up being
that was a very interesting story.
Goldberg of their day.
It's a very interesting story.
I think it's funny. Oh, I'm sorry. Would you imagine what Zbyszko and Strangler Lewis when they put the world title on that idiot actor that time, WCW, what they would have done? That old poor boy would have never left the building with that belt.
We will continue our series on the World Heavyweight Champions. It never gets dull, by the way. It is always very interesting when there's a World Heavyweight Championship. Yeah, you'll see what we're talking about. It always gets exciting when there's a world champion. If you enjoyed this video, give us the big thumbs up. Subscribe to the page if you haven't already. Go one step further. Hit that notification bell and watch the video right below us, right there next to Jack. And that will tell you a little bit more about the world champions. Until the next video, on behalf of Rodney West, Jack Lord, I'm Brent West. We'll see you in the next video right here on Pro Wrestling Inside Down. That's some interesting stuff.
Can you imagine that hack training 1,000 people? Can you imagine?
I hope he charged them.
Oh my gosh. That is something. What a con artist. I'll tell you right now.
He could be a promoter in Alabama.
1 hour and 41 minutes. That's a long match. Matches don't run that long anymore. There's no way you'll keep somebody for an hour and 41 minutes. You do good to get them to last 20 minutes.
You're talking about they probably worked a single hold for an hour and 20 minutes that too. So,
yeah. Jack, Brent, Rodney, was it better for wrestling in the old school days to have just one world heavyweight champion instead of having several?
Yes, it was. It was actually better for the business because you're able to promote him nationally, where every promoter is promoting the same guy, and it gives him legitimacy. When you have, especially where TVs are overlapping, and we've seen that here in Chattanooga, 2 U.S. champions. One was the Sheik, and Ric Flair was being promoted in Georgia. It doesn't help any. Jack, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we've always had multiple champions, since I guess the 40s, 50s. People splitting off and starting their own stuff and claiming their own world champions. I thought it would have been better, certainly, if we'd had just one.
Yeah, I agree. But I think that
would have entailed everybody having to work together, though, and so therein lies the crux of the problem.
Yes.
I never liked champion versus champion matches because you knew, even as a fan, you knew there wasn't nobody going to win it.
Yeah. Ric Flair and Bob,
big time houses.
No, and you know what I believe? I believe the fans also knew it. There was not going to be a winner of that match.
Yeah, there's going to be a DQ. There's going to be,
and it was a double disqualification, and to me, that would have set up for the next match, which should have been no disqualification until we finally could have had the winner. And it's a very simple thing. You don't kill anybody off. Losing does not kill you off unless you're Munn. But losing really doesn't kill you off. Not when you can, if you lose that one, and then, you know, a few weeks later, 6 weeks later or so, you beat him. Even if it's a non-title match, you beat him, you're still in good shape.
Well, I always thought I always thought it'd been great money if when Harley Race was the world's champion and Bob Backlund came down. What was it, Florida? They had a big match.
Yes.
If Harley had beat him.
Yes.
And then go the next Madison Square Garden show.
Yes.
And
it was Billy
that
Graham
championship, yeah. And but
Billy
defend
Graham.
that championship against them and drop it back.
Yes.
I think that would have drawn.
It would have been awesome. It would have been awesome. And the rematch would have been bigger than the original match.
Sure.
The rematch would have been bigger. And in fact, that match, it rained. It was terrible. The crowd was awful. It rained all day and lost half the crowd or most of the crowd.
Michael Barr said trained 1,000 students. Hope he had several trainings.
That was all in one day, Michael Barr.
That's right. He did. He brought students up on the stage and he gave them some.
And there were
pointers.
There were breaks for Coke and a moon pie, but that was it.
Can imagine.
Honestly, watching Dave's wrestling product makes me embarrassed to admit I was ever a fan. You know, my father used to say that he would go and he'd watch stuff and he'd say, man, I'm just embarrassed that I tell people I'm with the wrestling business. I won't even tell people. You got to remember, this is the same guy that would get beat up on television by a certain wrestler or get beat up in the auditorium, go to the local restaurants, all beaten up, black eyes, because he'd do the hard way. He'd do it that, and he'd walk in them and they'd go, oh, man, ain't you that referee that got beat up? And he said, yeah, I was. And he would just keep on going to different places the whole time, building this up. And he wanted people. In the years later, 1995, when he was working for WCW, he didn't even tell nobody he ever wrestled. He worked for pro wrestling. Even that was bad. And you look back at that time, matches are a whole lot better then than they are now. If you go back and watch them. But the problem was it was so much corporate problems that he just did not care if he was there or not. And somebody asked us, well, did he talk to Eric Bischoff when he took over? He didn't want to talk to Eric Bischoff when he took over. He was done. He was done with wrestling. He was not fun anymore. Do not feel bad there, Rick. It is ridiculous to watch it on TV, but some territories are slowly returning with some good wrestling. Yes, Michael, there are going to be some good wrestling coming. I think, you know what gets me when I hear wrestlers, when I hear the local wrestlers, I think they understand that they don't need to be doing what they're doing on TV, that they understand to slow it down. I'm not saying everybody does, but I think the majority of the guys understand it's not that product that they need to be doing. It's a completely different product. And so hopefully people will understand, go back to wrestling. Let's go back to wrestling, slow it down, tell a story. Even Ric Flair said that's what made wrestling. So, you know, if Ric Flair tells you and he drew all the money he drew, and let's make no bones about it, he drew a fortune in North Carolina. Go back and watch tapes. Go back and watch tapes. Ric Flair was the one that was over in 1976. There was a 2-ring triple chance battle royal, and the only time the people popped when they was beating up Flair. And it didn't matter who was beating them up. It didn't matter if it was Dick Murdoch. It didn't matter if it was Blackjack Mulligan. It was over a whole lot better with Blackjack Mulligan, because if you remember, Ric Flair took his hat that John Wayne gave him and messed it up, tore it up, or burned it or something on television. And that was how they started that, because they made a big deal out of it for about 3 months. They said, okay, we're going to do this with Ric Flair in 3 months from now. He said, I want you to talk about this hat, man, this hat. And they didn't do it for 3 months. They didn't do it 1 week and then tear it up the next. You know, build it up a little bit. Don't just do it.
And it wasn't hokey, because Blackjack Mulligan was one of the best when it came to telling the story.
Yeah.
He was really good.
I'm thinking Michael Barr meant the Goldberg of that day.
That's right.
It could have been Gilbert.
The Gilbert and the goalie was Gilbert. Yes.
I like watching Gilbert a whole lot better.
I love the history of the sport. Yes, it's incredible. There is so much rich tradition in wrestling that Vince does not, AEW do not even know. They don't even understand it. They don't get it. They don't know there was a world champion past Ric Flair. And that's what is so bad about it. They don't even know it. I may be wrong, but I think it was pronounced Stecker.
Stecker. Well,
or Stetcher.
We're not good with names.
Joe Stetcher. I thought it was Stetcher.
Yeah.
Wasn't it Stetcher?
I thought it was Stetcher.
It's
hold
on. Michael Barr said, I've heard some cons before, but 1,000 students.
That's right. That's a good one.
Yeah. Stecher. Stetcher. And I've heard it pronounced Stetcher.
Yeah. They did a story on it on NBC one time. I'm pretty sure they called him Joe Stetcher. I think it always works best with one world champion, all the regional champions. Whoa, man. Did y'all hear that? Even on that scared me a little bit, man. I'm gonna have to clean my drawers after that one. I think it always worked best with one world champion, all the original champions. He could be local regional challenge the world champion when he came through. Yeah, I agree with you, Brian.
Yeah.
Worked great for years. Charles, Brent Rodney, were you there when Dusty Rhodes beat Harley Race in Atlanta 40 years ago? Yes, we
were.
We were at the Omni when that happened, and I'm not for certain, but were we inside the TBS booth when that happened? Or was Gordon Foley there?
No, no, they would have sent Eric to do the filming of that. We were in our box.
We did. We were there. We were there. The place went nuts. We were there. We got to be a lot around.
And think about how he won. Did he win with the elbow and followed up with the elbow smash? No, he won with something that Dusty never really does: cross body from the top rope. That's how he won.
Charles, Bob Backlund defended the WWF title in the Omni versus Rodney's favorite wrestler, Kevin Sullivan. I saw that one. Yeah, but at that point, Kevin wrestled.
Yep.
He was still wrestling by that time.
He was still having great matches at that time. Yeah, we were there. Tremendous, because I think that was the same night as the no, that was he went against Toru Tanaka the night of the Shaggle match, wasn't it? I think he went against Toru. Because Bob Backlund came to Atlanta a lot.
Yeah, Bob Backlund was actually wrestling in Atlanta before he went to work for Vince McMahon.
I've got it done. I've got the Pro Wrestling USA thing done. I just forgot every time about putting it in there. But maybe I can. Maybe if I can get it together, I'll do it Monday. I've got it ready. There's nothing interesting about it though, Richard. I know that sounds bad. But was there anything interesting? Was anything interesting about Pro Wrestling USA?
No.
I know that sounds bad, but it was a horrible, horrible show. Nothing ever happened on it. And I'm sorry, Strictly Wrestling is not going to draw you money. Now, I'm just being honest with you. You have to have character versus character. That's what draws. And I know that some people don't like to hear the word character versus character. I think it's Pat that don't like to be. He don't like them to be called talent, right?
Yes.
So he likes them to be called wrestlers, and I get that. I understand that. And it's what we used to call name versus name. You built up a heel, you built up a baby face, you put them together. That was the and not always did that draw. Ken Patera, Tommy Rich didn't draw. But I don't remember any built up on Ken Patera. I think he just came in and won the Georgia heavyweight title. Or as he called it, the Georgia State title. I don't think he ever called it Georgia heavyweight title. He called it the Georgia State championship. Evidently, he wore a completely different belt than everybody else had wore. He had the Georgia State.
Well, he was the Missouri State champion. That's where he got it from, I'm sure.
Mulligan tore up Flair's robe. Yes, I think he did. And then I think that happened after he did something to his hat, his John Wayne hat. I'm pretty sure it was John Wayne. Could have been somebody else. I'm going to tell you what, Dick Murdoch was over in the Carolinas as well. Michael Barr, if these so-called W wrestlers would quit trying to look for overnight stardom and wrestle old school wrestling, it would get the fans involved. If they wasn't trying to get their spots in, it would be.
Well, and here's the thing. I don't blame them. They're being forced to remember all these moves. What, goes around this storyline now is just nothing but spots put together. And you can't remember 100 spots and still look at the crowd and engage with them.
No.
It's just impossible to do. I don't blame them. I think it's become so commercialized. Is that the word I'm looking for? That everything's the same. You got wrestlers with different looks, but all the matches are the same.
Yes.
Spots are the same.
You're exactly right.
So
and the formula for each match is the same.
Yeah.
There's no surprises there.
I would love if they would do an experiment of just coming in one week and say, okay, these are your matches. Y'all go do it. And not tell them anything but a finish. Not tell them anything. Not allow them to even talk beforehand. And I just think that their real raw talent would start coming out that way. And until you get that real talent, until you really see what these people are capable of, fans are not going to engage in them no more than what they already are.
No, you give them criteria.
Yeah.
You give them a criteria. All right, first match, so that not everybody does a headlock. First match, you go do the headlock. You do your spots, go back to the headlock, go to spots. Second match, go to the arm. Next guy does the bear hug. Next guy does the arm and the leg. And to give them criteria, don't go outside the ring. Don't do any flips off the top. Don't go off the top rope. We'll tell you when we want you to go off the top rope.
That is exactly what I did with the last WrestleSlash show. First one, I gave them too much leeway, and they were doing everything they could do like they did it on TV. So I put a stop to that on the second show. Nobody was allowed to dive. Nobody was allowed to go out of the ring. Not just during the first few matches. Nobody the entire show was allowed to go out of the ring.
Yeah.
And you know what? An amazing thing happened. They had to wrestle.
Oh, boy.
So, and it turned out so good.
Yeah, that's very important. Give them criteria. You give them criteria, but don't give them everything to do from bell to bell. Number one, they're not going to remember it. I can't remember my name most of the time, so I know I wouldn't be able to. All right, Rodney, what did you want in the?
Oh, well, I was going to say I would add one more thing to what I would have for this experiment, and that would be there would be no music. They would be in the ring for introduction. I guarantee you half of them would walk out.
I think the guys would adapt to that quicker than the audience would.
You think so?
Yeah.
Because the most of the time, the ring entrances are nothing more but time killers. That's exactly what they're designed for. Is they're time killers, and they have to go out and I've heard others say they have to do their signature poses. Forget that. Forget that. Nobody cares about your signature.
Well, I will tell you,
poses.
everybody that's here, there'll be no music at Fayette, Georgia. Number one, we can't do it because I ain't gonna pay for the music to get played on YouTube. So, but not only that, we don't have time to do the entrances.
Well, if we start out, if you watch the WrestleVision shows that we've done, it looks just fine with everybody being in the ring when it opens up and we do the ring introductions and it goes right to it. It saves a lot of time and a lot of what you saw when even Georgia Championship Wrestling back in whenever they tried to get as much wrestling time in as possible. So in some shows they eliminated the ring introductions altogether. They just ring the bell. In fact, if you watch World Championship Wrestling, they do that.
Well, because they know it's very important. Wrestling fans want to see wrestling. They really don't care about seeing the entrances. They don't care. They could care less. If you're the Undertaker, yes, but the people don't want to see every match. They're like, oh my gosh, didn't that guy just come up and they did they did that little flashing light? Didn't they just do that in the first match? They did it for the third match too.
Yeah, that's another thing I heard though that Vince was wanting to cut down on was the length of the entrances.
Yeah, it's just way too long.
And it's the same because it's the same movie every week coming down the aisle. Ziggler well, no, not Ziggler. Mitz and Morrison's.
Yeah,
it's just so repetitive.
Well, I think what they're finding by closely watching and finding out when the entrances are and when people are switching, when those long entrances are happening, people are flipping away from the station and they're looking for something else. So those drawn out entrances are losing an audience.
Yeah, and see that's the one thing that I wouldn't want to do a show with them because it's been done. It's been done for 30 years. It's time to go back. Not saying there shouldn't be music within your program.
Sure, and I'm not saying that they should eliminate all of those entrances. They should just limit them to a very few select. Yeah. Same as in Mid-South, Junkyard Dog was the only one with music. No one else had it. Freebirds.
Well, I had a few heels get a little. I won't say mad, but they didn't understand because I told them when your music hits, you go straight to the ring.
Thank you.
Don't stand on stage. Don't soak up the light. Go to the ring. You're not getting smoked. There's one guy tonight getting smoked. Nobody else is getting that. Just go to the ring.
Thank you.
And they were like, well, I do this, I do that. I said, no, not tonight. Tonight you go to the ring.
Thank you. You're exactly right about that because I've said it before. If you come out there and you're doing all this nonsense to the crowd and you're running to the ring, it looks like it's your first match. You look green. You look like an amateur. If you're a professional, you've got your eye on that ring and you're focused. And you don't acknowledge anybody until you get in the ring.
If you're a heel and you don't know how to carry yourself as a heel, you're not a heel. You're just a guy that's going to the ring.
Exactly. Kevin must have got in the wrong crowd or country with zombies.
I have still not watched a Raw or SmackDown since the zombies, and I watched the pay-per-view last night, and I was thinking, now maybe y'all can hook me back into watching, but they did not.
It was a tie between Race, Briscoe, and Backlund over the world who would replace Terry Funk as champion. Vince Sr. decided to take Backlund as his champion, so Race was voted in as NWA champion, and that was the best decision they could make, no doubt. He had some great matches. Anybody got to see Harley Race wrestle? He started out slow, but boy, by the last 15 minutes of that match, the people were standing. Yep. Did many territories have heel versus heel matches? The first one I saw was Sheik against Wild. But yes, a lot of places did that.
Yes. Mostly they call the Battle of the Brutes. Nigulas had them all the time. And then Carolinas did. The Andersons and Rip Hawk and Sweet Hansen many times.
Let's see, Jack, if you did that now, folks would get hurt bad because those guys aren't developing their skills over years in small towns undercards. They only know what they are told now.
Overall, I agree with that. I do. I just know that, where I'm at here, the guys that I use, I'm teaching them a different way. Old school way. They don't like it sometimes, but they're doing it.
when you say, Jack, you would do that if you was at a WWF show and you would do that night, you would let them know well in advance. It would
you wouldn't pull that out.
You would probably bring them into the performance center and go through it, and so they go out there and they don't look like deer in headlights.
Yeah, I don't want anybody in a referee's ear calling. If they get off track with the things they thought of beforehand, hey, do something different.
Exactly. Well, and when you see the interview with Les, you'll see what we were talking about, and of course he's talking about training, or maybe he mentioned it in the last interview. That's the reason you need to develop the basics. That way, if you do get lost, you can go back. You can go back to a headlock or whatever and start over.
Y'all know how many times that me and several different partners worked with Nightmares, and we never discussed opening. I mean, openings were pretty standard. You either knew how to do an opening or you didn't. But we would call one spot during the match that would be for the heat takeover, and then we'd call the finish, and that was it. And I remember many times Kenny Wayne coming over and calling something, and I would say, "Well, how are we going into it?" And he'd say, "I don't know. We'll figure it out when we get there." And we'd always figure it out when we got there.
Yes.
And it always worked. I think it works so much better that way because you had to be in tune with each other.
And it didn't look choreographed. Everything they do looked choreographed.
Yeah.
Like more like a dance than it does a match.
Yep. And don't call it that either, because Pat doesn't like that either.
Does it like what? Call it a match?
He doesn't like for it to be called a dance.
Oh, a dance. Well, that's what it looks like.
Jack, sounds like you're doing a good job with the organization. Appreciate how you train your wrestlers.
Well, we're just trying.
Brent, it was designed to go against Vince. I know it was designed to go against Vince, but from the get-go, you didn't have to not know that wasn't going to make it. That first show, you could tell it was not going to make it. It just wasn't.
And thus, Richard, the reason it was doomed to fail in the first place, you never do anything to get at somebody else. You do it so you're providing a great service or product to the fans. You'd never go out, so I'm doing this to harm someone else. You're doing this to provide a service or a product to your fans. That's the most important part.
Horrible, 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 and horrible.
Yep.
Those matches were horrible.
I had somebody comment the other day that they thought that was one of the greatest wrestling cards they'd ever seen, and I just had to scroll on by.
It had great talent on it, but there was no direction. There was no direction whatsoever. You cannot let the wrestlers. Now, there is a certain thing of letting the wrestlers control their match, but you have to also control it and give them, as we said, guidelines to go by. So if they're not doing all the same thing, because if you better be very careful, all matches will be the same.
Yep.
Been there, done that, seen that happen. All matches with exactly the same match, and you can't do that.
Yeah, I saw an all chinlock show one night.
Limit maybe just a couple matches of music, nothing else. The main event should be, and I agree with that. But I want people to know we are advertising Old School Wrestling for Lafayette, Georgia, on Friday, October 8th, and it will be Old School Wrestling. And
I am going to bring an 8-track player though, just in case.
There may be one or two places for music, but in general, it will be an Old School Wrestling. That's how we're advertising it. So,
intermission. There's your music,
and that's going to be Marty Robbins playing.
There you go.
Oh my goodness.
El Paso City.
Oh, that was. Oh my goodness, that's what they played in Shreveport in this full auditorium. We wanted to go down there and just destroy that tape.
Honestly, if we were going to have music, let's say we were going to have a music. The problem is we have 2 hours, and we need to produce a certain amount of product for YouTube and for other things that we're going to do. We just don't have time to put entrances in it. We just wouldn't have time to do it. So we have to just. One match is over. The other guys are on the way to the ring.
Yeah, y'all will see the 3 of us at various points yelling at each other to get the next match out. Get to the ring.
Jack, do your wrestlers work for other promotions? Do they have problems using your style against those not trained that way?
Actually, almost all of those guys are coming back to me. They do work for other promotions, by the way. And they're coming back to me and saying that the promotions that they're working for outside of us are appreciating their talents more now because they're learning. We're making them learn.
Excellent.
Guys, no disrespect to today's wrestling, but we should only talk about old school wrestling. Here's the thing, Richard. Our show is Pro Wrestling Inside Now. So at some point, you got to talk about certain wrestling that's going on today because it is part of the wrestling business, even though we may not like what's going on. At some points, and we mainly stick to old school wrestling. But there is times we talk about what's going on.
I think it's good, not every week, but it's good to contrast today's style with what we grew up with or what we used to see. Whoops, there goes Jack again.
I can remember Thunderbolt and Wild Beer Curry having 10-round boxing back in '69. I would love to see that. Richard Hood. Rick, wasn't Thunderbolt the Brass Knuckles champion during that time? Could have been. I'm not for sure.
Let Rick answer that.
After all, in the end, it's what the fans enjoy and keeps them coming back to watch what the wrestlers and that's true. Wrestlers are wrestlers, and the fans paying for what they want. That's exactly you should watch the fans. If you drop off, you did something wrong. People don't come back to the next show. You did something wrong. And then change it. If it didn't work, change it. The next time, hey, listen, we might go to Lafayette. Lafayette. What I keep on calling it Lafayette. Might go back to Lafayette, and people might say, "Oh man, we want some music." We might have to put it right back in. You never know. You do what the people want, not what you want. I believe he was Richard. I'm not for sure what he's talking about. All right, guys, you ready to do this? Because we're
Brass Nuts champion.
We got to do this. I'm going to go through this, but I think we actually went through all the information that's going to matter. So let's just show some pictures in this thing.
Okay.
Because I'm reading through that. We went through all the pages. We went through.
There was one point where somebody had mentioned something about $50,000 or something. Was there not a conversation about that was supposed to be? Is it in the book?
I believe it might be in the. Well, I'll read this. I'll read the forward from Jerry Jarrett. That's where this is where it talks about it.
Okay.
I'll read the forward to it. All right, y'all ready?
Nope.
Going in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pro Wrestling Inside Now. We're going to do the final installment on the Memphis Wrestling History Presents 1977, The War for Memphis, written by Mark James. By the way, this book's available on Amazon for, I believe, $24 or something like that, Jack? $22?
$22.99, I believe.
$22.99 available on Amazon. So go get the book. It's a great book. Great book. Now, just because we don't agree with the front part of it, that's what makes wrestling great. That's what makes what we do great. We don't all have to agree. We're not Vince McMahon. You don't have to agree with us. So, Let me read this forward. I didn't read it last time. I wasn't going to read it, but I'm going to read the forward from Jerry Jarrett. He did the forward of this book. And so I'm going to read this. I recall the day Nick Goulas' office like it was yesterday. I recall the day in Nick Goulas' office like it was yesterday. Your email, and I guess the guy emailed him, your email, because I know Nick Goulas and Jerry Jarrett wasn't emailing each other back in 1977. So. Your email caused me to feel all the mixed emotions I did that day so very long ago. I was sitting at my desk in the new office building built with money we made on Memphis end of the territory. By the way, they never made any money in Birmingham or any of those other places. But hey, that's my office was next door to my mother's office. Nick's office and his son George's office were directly across the hall from our offices. In retrospect, the office layout seemed to be a precursor to the events that unfolded. We had not been in the new office but a few weeks. Perhaps the physical change in location gave Nick an inflated image of his promotion ability. Whatever brought about his newfound confidence, I don't know, but he had no doubts that he could function well without my services. He came into my office in a tone of voice that was not different than Then if he was asking about the weather, Nick said, I'm sending George to the Memphis Inn next week. He has been on the Birmingham Inn too long. I was at a total loss for an answer. He had always referred to the Memphis Inn as Jerry's Inn, and he had always asked me regarding the talent exchange and never demanded. He turned and walked back to his office, and I followed. I stated that the exchange was not going to take place next week or ever. I asked, have you forgotten that I own 50% of this business and you can't tell me who to book? Nick advised that I better call Cecil Brownsitter, I guess is how you say this guy's name, his attorney. And I thought my attorney regarding ownership. I knew at that moment that something was up. I returned to my office and called Cecil. The attorney advised that I had no ownership and that I had bought an option to buy, and the option expired yesterday. Sounds just like Nick Goulas. Sounds like a Nick Goulas ploy right there. I don't say that did not happen. I'm pretty sure it did. You know, Ronnie Gossett learned from somewhere. And that was from Nick Goulas. By the way, Ronnie Gossett, for those of you who didn't know, sold Nick Goulas' territory about 10 times. Yeah, you may have tried to buy part of that territory. If you did, I'm sorry. I hung up the phone and tried to calm myself and assess all that had happened in the past few minutes. I walked into Nick's office and simply stated, you are making the mistake of your life. You and your cricket attorney are not bright enough to understand that regardless of what I do, you can't make money in the towns you promote, and a change in towns will not change your inability to make money. By that time, my mother walked to Nick's office and asked what was going on. She followed me into the office, and I advised her to sit tight, and I let her know as soon as I knew what was going on. I got my briefcase and left the office and returned to my home in Hendersonville. I believe that all happened.
Yeah, no dispute.
We're not arguing that fact here, are we?
No, and we have to understand this was after the passing of Roy Welch. Is that right?
It was either the passing of Roy Welch or he was very sick. Okay. So he was not making any shows. I don't understand though I don't understand why Buddy Fuller wasn't there. I don't understand why there was not another son there. Why just Jerry Jarrett? Why wasn't
Buddy was floating around from what I understand. In fact, when they were doing the angle with Jarrett and Lawler, where Lawler was holding them up for more money for the next year's contract, Buddy was mentioned, and Jarrett said that me and Buddy had been talking about it. And then that's when Jerry Jarrett says, I don't really care whether you're here or not. Told Lawler that on television. Said, I quite frankly would like to see you gone.
All right. This is physically the events of that morning. Mentally, I encountered the entire scope of emotions. Mostly I was shocked at his stupidity. The Birmingham entered the territory, lost in every town he ran. Birmingham, Chattanooga, Nashville, Huntsville, and the associate spot shows all lost money. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true. Because in 1977, we would go to Chattanooga, packed houses. We would go with my grandmother, Rodney, to the matches, and it was doing great.
Yes.
So yes. I don't know how they were losing money. I don't. So we were there. We went to the shows. There were packed houses. Maybe Jerry, he was just telling you they weren't making no money. Remember, Jerry,
if you're owning 50%
of the territory,
owning percentage of a territory, and you want Nick Goulas to give you the accurate account of what the box office are, I got a territory I'd like to sell you.
By the way, Jared, I hate to be very, very mean to you, but I think he was really, not only was he getting you on 50% of the territory, but we were in Chattanooga in 1977, and he was drawing some sellout houses.
And they were in Birmingham, and yes. He knew, and the fact of the matter is, he kind of should have known what was going on in those towns, because a lot of the same wrestlers that would wrestle over on his end would be wrestling in Chattanooga too. So they should have been a swap there somewhere. I mean, you had Dennis Condrey and Phil Hickerson. They're working both sides. Are the wrestlers coming to you saying, "Oh, by the way, we don't want to work that in anymore. We're not making any money over there"? It's
kind of hard, but we would go to Chattanooga. We heard about Birmingham because Atlanta would send talent there. We were there several times in Chattanooga when the crowds were huge, with Wrestling 2 on the show, with Ole Anderson, big crowds. So, Jared, I just don't think he paid you what you were supposed to be getting.
You're probably right.
No. Yeah. Oh. See, the Memphis Inn, which was Memphis, Louisville, Evansville, Lexington, Tupelo, and Jonesboro, and the associate sponsors made enough profit to pay Nick's losses and still provided a comfortable living for all of us. Now, remember, Jarrett, hate to tell you this. Oh,
poor guy.
Respect you, Jerry, but man, you're gullible. You ain't getting it. You ain't getting it.
No, Dick was pocketing your money, buddy.
He was pocketing your money, buddy. And telling you it was losing.
We're losing all kinds in these other towns, and he was pocketing that money the whole time. Because I can tell you, he wasn't ready to fold up and head to the house.
No.
Go ahead.
No. Associate spot shows made enough money to pay Nick's losses. As I got closer to Hendricks on the dread of explaining to Deborah that not only did not have the business I thought we owned, but I didn't have a job, brought me out of the dazed state I was in to a state of anger. No, a better description is hate. I sat Deborah down and tried to compose myself as I explained the events of the morning. Now it was her turn to experience shock. While my shock was replaced with anger, her shock was replaced with fear. What are you going to do? Are we going to have to move? There are no jobs in the wrestling business. Well, he could have went to Atlanta and booked. I'm pretty sure Jim Barnett would have brought him back because he did a great job while he was there. Which means we have to we will have to move away. Then the tears began. I wanted to be strong for her, but I had no answers. The emptiness, the fear of unknown, the inability to reassure my wife reduced me to tears also. I finally hugged Deborah and walked outside to our boat dock on the old Hickory Lake. By the way, Jared making all that money, he had a boat dock while other people were living in the motel down the road. Yes. Yeah.
So are you trying to say, let me try to get this right. Are you trying to say that which Nick Goulas did to him, he did to others?
Yeah.
Okay.
I must have stared at the water for an hour or so. Now, I'm not going to say maybe he didn't do that. Maybe people make good money. It would be up to people like Bill Dundee, Dutch Mantel, Jerry Lawler, folks like that. They'd have to chime in and see. But I do know, I believe, I was told by Bill Dundee, the reason Jerry Jarrett got it and reason Jerry Lawler wanted to leave that territory and Lance Russell, because he took everybody to a party at his house, at his big $1 million estate, and people was looking around going, well, we must not be making the payoffs we should be making. He's in $1 million home, and we're living down here at the Village Rouge Apartments in Nashville. Something's got to give. Don't ever bring your people, Jack. When you go to big business, don't ever bring them to your $1 million home.
I have paneling, so it's not a $1 million home.
Yes. Well, I wouldn't have to worry about our $1 million home.
They'll probably be taking up a GoFundMe if they ever come over. Buy Jack a home.
Oh, okay. Well, then where was I at? I must have stared at the water for an hour or so. When I returned to the house, Deborah had fallen asleep from the exhaustion of crying. Yeah, that's what I always do. I cry myself to sleep. I crawled on the couch beside her and fell asleep too. The next morning, Deborah said nothing, and her silence sent me back to the emotional gutter. Now it was her comforting me. I sat on the couch and cried until I felt myself getting nauseated. I returned to the boat dock in his beautiful boat dock that he had. He had to say that 3 times in this thing. I turned to God as I had in my entire life and prayed that he helped me be strong during this ordeal to comfort Deborah. As I prayed, I realized I was offending God simply by my fear and lack of trust. A calm came over me as I apologized to him for my lack of faith. I returned to the house and took Deborah in my arms, explaining that we both should be ashamed for our lack of trust in God. I reminded her that a wonderful our path. It would turn out fine, no better know better than fine. It would be wonderful. Deborah said the phone had been ringing off the wall, and I better begin telling everyone what was happening. I went to the office and began making calls. I called my mother, Teeny, and Eddie Marling first, explained that the best way that could help me was to keep it on, at least until Nick fired them. He never fired anyone, which left my lines of communications open to all talent. Well, stupid on Nick's part, but that was Nick's ego. He believed he had them. Now, let's remember Nick Goulas. He told our father one time, he gave our father like $20 to take the ring and referee in one town. And he told Nick, I will not come back until you pay me what you say you're going to pay me. Yeah, kid, we'll see you at so-and-so. So he thought he would show up there regardless. Guess who did not show up? He did not take the ring. He did not. And Nick calls him next day and says, well, boy, where was you? He said, I told you I wasn't coming. So Nick thought he had everybody. He was so much smarter than everybody else. And he could pay him whatever he wanted to pay him. So, yeah, I agree with that. He just thought they would just take whatever he gave them and they would deal with it. So I can see this happening, can't y'all?
Yeah.
So I can see Nick not caring. He never fired anyone who left my, okay. I then began calling the wrestlers, and of course, every one of them stated that they would be with me, whatever I did. Every phone call and every response boosted my self-confidence. I had no idea that I would be able to start a new promotion from scratch, but on by faith, I was getting prepared. I then began calling the television stations on the Memphis end, and the next the building managers. Lance Russell stated that Channel 13 would be on my account, as did the Louisville, Evansville, and Lexington television station. It was an easy decision for the television station and the arenas because they really didn't know Nick. That's always a bad thing. Make sure if it's your company, make sure they know who you are. The Mid-South Coliseum was the exception because the contract was in the name of Goulas and Welch. I next called Guy Coffey and inquired about the old Ellis Auditorium, and he said he was excited to get wrestling back in the building. I think I became confident I could start a new business at the point I was happy and emotionally high, and now confident. I was exhausted after being on the phone with her all day. That must have wore him out. I experienced every emotion possible in the span of 2 days, and this was more exhausting than any experience. And this goes on to say what he goes on any further, but this would go on for years. I think that when you want to learn about this book, that not for sure. I think it's a one-sided book talking about Jarrett, and I don't blame him because he wrote a forward for it. If Mark James would have if he had done this book years early, he could have talked to Nick Goulas. I don't know that it would have been because I don't even know George knew what was going on in Nick's business. But do get this book. Great pictures. It tells you everything about 1977. Jerry Jarrett did a spectacular job at promoting professional wrestling. He was one of the last territories. It showed the abilities of Jerry Jarrett. And this is a great book. Very thick book. A lot of great pictures in it. And we won't show you all the pictures. Go buy the book, and I think you'll enjoy it. I think Banana Nose is in here. Lance Russell. I think I saw in here where he did a picture of and he called him Banana Nose. He gives him actually, he did a photograph of him.
Well, what we've learned here is that remember when we were reading the other, and I was kind of taken aback about the comments made about Nick, about him not being a successful promoter, and that the other end was dead. That was a complete fiction. And now that after we heard the fort from Jarrett, and I don't put it past Nick that he told him that they were losing money. He said, well, what about how much is Chattanooga doing? Oh, well, I lost money on that. You didn't get any money on that because Nick pocketed the whole thing. That is not, and that's not unheard of. But to say that Nick, first of all, was backward, and I think that was one of the comments he was saying, his show was not backwards. Nick was one of the first Southern promotions that actually did an arena show. They did it from Nashville. Michael St. John was actually the commentator of that show, and it played right here in Chattanooga. So he wasn't backwards, and Nick was not stuck in his ways. If it make him money, he would do it. He would pocket all the money, but he would do it for sure. And if you ever want to see a match of Nick Gulas, the King of Kingsport website, I think on YouTube, has a great match with the Blonde Bombers, who just so happened to work for Jarrett as well, against Dutch Mantell, another one that worked for Jarrett as well. Against was the Blonde Bombers against Terry Sawyer and Dutch Mantell. Was awesome match. An awesome match. Get a chance to check it out. And you'll notice it's the same format that Jarrett was using. Same exact format that Jarrett was using.
In closing, Jarrett, one of the greatest promoters of all time.
Sure.
I don't think any of us can sit here and say that Jarrett wasn't, but Nick Gulas was just as good. As
what would you say that Nick is? What year did he start promoting wrestling?
In the 1950s, I believe.
So 30 years, right at 30 years of promoting wrestling. That's you're not dumb if you've promoted for 30 years for sure.
And remember this: by 1989, Jarrett Promotions was really struggling. By 1989, that would have been no more than 10 years. In 1987, probably wasn't doing very well either. So in 10 years, business was bad. And remember, Nick Gulas, 30 some odd 40 years in the wrestling business. That just says this: Nick Gulas is not as bad as this book portrays him out to be. Did he give it bad payoffs? Yes. You would get that envelope. It would be thick. And you would go, man, he paid me a lot of money today. You'd find out it would just be all ones.
That's right. We called it Nick Gulas Wad.
If you want the Nick Gulas Wad, by the way, Nick Gulas Wad is very simple. Put you a $100 bill, fold it up, and have that. The rest of them are going to be $1 bills.
That's right.
Looks like you have a wad of money. The Nick Gulas Wad. That's
right.
What it is. Did Nick Gulas lie? Yes. Did he probably do that to Jarrett? Yes. Did he? Was Nick Gulas a good person? No. But was he a good promoter of professional wrestling? Yes. Did he do people wrong? Yes. Our father, many times he did wrong. That was just all there is. But that's a wrestling promoter sometimes. Folks, get the book. You'll enjoy it. Just look at the pictures, though. Don't read it. If you enjoyed this video, give us a big thumbs up. Subscribe to the page. Go one step further. Hit that notification bell. And watch the video down below us. Hey, we've talked all we can talk about this book. We'll see you in the next video. Right here on Pro Wrestling Inside Now. Well, I'm gonna tell you what, this book gets crazier and crazier every time. We could write
I can tell you Nick was telling him those towns were dying and not giving him if he was percentage owner, he wasn't giving him anything off of those towns. Not a cent. What?
It was drawn in 1977.
Sure it was. Sure
we used to go with your grandmother, sit in them box seats. The place would be packed.
Yes. Yes, and Nashville was not dead. Chattanooga was not dead. Birmingham, Huntsville, still going strong.
Well, Dad went to Birmingham and said it was packed houses there.
Yeah.
Ole had to argue about the payoffs.
Exactly right.
Nick Gulas would try to give you. Didn't you say, Jack, you worked there and you worked for him a few times as well?
Yep. Yep. I made almost enough to starve.
All right, let's go through this.
Do you remember, oh gosh, Talmadge that wrestled as the Red Shadow?
Yeah, I think I do, yeah.
Okay. He's a great guy. He just passed away about a year or so ago. But he told me the story of him and Nick getting into it because Nick was paying him $25 a show. This was in the 60s. And paying him $25 a show. And he said twice, he told Nick, he said, Nick, I'm not making any money. He says, it cost me everything I got to eat, gas, be away from home. He said, I can't pay no bills at $25 a night. And Nick told him, he said, you're going to be in Birmingham, right? We'll talk about it then. So he goes to Birmingham. And he said, Nick just avoids him the whole show. And then he leaves. Don't talk to him at all. So he calls him. He said, so I just let time get away from him. He said, you're coming next Monday. I think it was Mondays they ran. He said, you're coming next week, Birmingham, right? I said, yeah, put me on the card. And so he didn't go. So about halfway through the show, Nick calls him. I said, I'm sitting at home in the living room. I'm watching TV. My wife says, honey, Mr. Goodless is on the phone. He said, so I got the phone. And he said, tell me, where you at? He said, well, Nick, I guess I'm at home since you called my home phone number. And he said, you told me you was going to be here. He said, well, you told me you was going to talk to me last week. So I guess both of us are just liars. And Nick said, well, you've got enough time. You can get here. And he said, I sure can for $40. And Nick said he said a few choice words and said, well, come on then. He said after that, he said, I got $40 every show. So never had another crossword with him. He said, you just had to prove that you were going to stand up to him.
Yeah.
Tojo got paid well. Jackie Fargo got paid well. Don Fargo got paid well. You had to do it. Dad said after he did that to Nick, he said he never messed him around on his payoffs again because he knew he was going to show up.
No, after and I absolutely believe that story that he said, and I absolutely have also believed that he was telling Jarrett those towns were not doing well.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the deal that Dad was going to go? He was going to book for Nick before he closed, and the deal that he was going to make is going to pay him a certain amount, and then he was going to get 10% as well. Dad would never have seen the 10%.
Did y'all watch the Steve Austin interview thing last night with Mick Foley?
No.
It's great. And they talked about Memphis, about how they both had been there. And Mick was talking about how, Steve asked him, he said, well, you make no money there. He said, how did you survive? He said, well, first off, I rented a room from this old woman. He said it was cheap. He said the only bad thing was she had a granddaughter that lived with her that was always in trouble. And so I was used as, girl, if you don't straighten up, Mad Jack right here is going to whoop you. He said, so I found one of the boys that wanted to share an apartment. He said, so I get all my stuff out of there. And he said, I show up at his apartment, and it's one bedroom, and there's no couch. And he said, and I'm thinking, yeah, no, I do a lot of things. This ain't one of them. I think he shortly thereafter found other employment.
Nobody made any money in Memphis, said there. When he talks about people not being paid, I mean, Rock will tell you he starved to death while he was there.
They offered me $40 a night. That's what they offered me.
And that was a pretty good payoff. I think that at the end, when he was there, I think it was $20. I think you were only going to get $20. If it didn't draw, you didn't make nothing.
Yep.
That he was making sometimes $220 a week, working 7 days a week. And I'm not making that up. It's in his book. And it costs more than that to make the towns. And I think downtown Bruno let him live with him. And that's how he survived. And so nobody was being paid then. Business was bad. And I'm not discrediting Jarrett, but they all believed they were geniuses while everyone else was stupid. Yeah. Nick Goulas was not a stupid man. He was a thief. He was a liar.
He was dishonest. He was a no good. Sure. Yeah, he was dishonest.
He was a dishonest.
Everybody that worked with him has their Nick Goulas story. Everybody. Tommy Weathers, Dutch had his. Danny Davis has his.
And
Wayne Ferris. They all have their story.
Of guys who really thought the world of him. Wade Gann is one of those who has nothing but good things to say about Nick. But Nick liked him. And there's a difference. just like Michael St. John. Michael St. John doesn't have anything bad to say about him. In fact, he had some good stories to say about him. But he really liked Michael St. John. So I think that's what it boiled down to. If he felt something for you, he'd take care of you. And I think what that feeling good part was were you making him money? Yeah. So if you were making him money, then he liked you and he took care of it.
Exactly. And I have nothing but respect for him. Did he do people wrong? I mean, he would bring people and hold their passports, their work visas, and wouldn't let them leave. I mean, Nick was, Dwayne Johnson wanted to do a series on wrestling promotions in the 60s and 70s and 80s. He wanted to do a whole series on it. He kind of does it a little bit in his show, but can you imagine that show and what it could tell the stories of the pro wrestling territories and how it was run? It was like the mafia, and there's just no doubt about it. It was like the mafia. Let's go and get this, and then we need to get off here. It's almost 10 o'clock here. So sadly, seems like too many of the day stars don't have the respect for the history and just don't know the history of the sport. And yes, I call it a sport. Yes, I'm with you on that. Do y'all agree with that?
Totally.
Yes. It's that what came before that, it's no value to them whatsoever. And if you mention it, they roll their eyes and treat you like you're that you're that you just spit on the Pope or something.
Or you got a third eye?
Yeah. Well, that would be Kevin Sullivan, and they would bend over backwards for him.
I would enjoy discussion about Super, but we'll do the Super Classic sale. They had some good talent on it.
We just have to order alcohol because we'll have to watch it.
Good point, Brent. Seemed like there should have been someone else there for that territory. Michael Barr. For sure, Birmingham was bringing in full houses.
Yes.
Like
I said, he was telling Jerry that we're not drawing anything. We're just losing money.
Jerry might want to show up there a couple of times to see if it was really drawing.
Well, he was on some of those cards. We know that. Jackie Fargo was on those cards. That Jackie and Tojo and all close with Jerry.
I can already hear Nick right now. Jackie. Now, when you get back to Memphis, tell them it was not doing well.
You're probably right, Tojo. Yeah, same.
I wouldn't put it past Nick. I really enjoy the program now. I hope y'all had a happy Father's Day. Yeah, I was laying on my back the whole day because my back was killing me the whole day long. I did good to even get up out of the floor a few times. Brent, what was the name of the organization? What was he talking about? I'm lost.
That was Goulas Welch.
Goulas Welch.
And then later on, it was Goulas Welch Jarrett. Chattanooga, it was Goulas Welch Thornton.
Michael Barr doing to others as you would have them. Forget that. Dan and Brent, you should compare the attendance of Jarrett shows versus Goulas shows, even though Goulas had the Mid-South Coliseum. He did not draw in Memphis. But I think Nick did not end up with the original TV show. I believe he had to start with a new TV show, which takes, if you're in the wrestling business, it takes you around 12 weeks to be able to establish that TV time where you'll ever draw any money. It's always been that way. You would go into Columbus, Mississippi. The show would run 4 months before you ever ran a show. Knoxville, the same way. So, sounds like Jarrett was happy with Jarrett.
Yes.
Yeah. Jarrett thought he was smarter than most people. He did something to a guy one time. He said, "Watch this." And this is a true story. Was told by the Dundies, this story. It was raining outside. He said, "Watch this." The guy went and left. They had got through talking to him. He got out, left the place, and it was raining really hard. And he yells at the guy, "Hey!" Jarrett yells at the guy that leaves, "Hey, by the way, make sure you're there at so-and-so. And the guy just stands there in the rain because the boss is asking, tell him a question. And he stops there. And instead, he looks at Bill and them. See, he ain't even got enough sense to get out of the rain. We can do whatever we want to with him. Remember those stories when you're thinking Nick Goulas was a bad person. Somebody would do that to you. He has no respect for anybody. Why wasn't Dutch Mantel featured on Memphis documentary a few years ago? Do you know, Jack?
No particular reason. I think they were just limited on time and who all they could get in there. I don't think Dutch had as much of a high profile career as the ones featured.
I have heard of wrestlers that would pocket at other monies as well. I have heard of a wrestler that would or pocket other monies as well.
Other wrestlers.
Is this an Austin Idol story?
Get Jared on here so we can hear the story about how he invented Mr. Yeah, I've heard that story, Charles. I've heard the story. I don't know. Ole did too, so I don't know. There were so many people.
Bill Watts did as well.
Yes.
But there was only one person that created Mr. Wrestling #2, and that's Leo Garibaldi. And two will tell you that. We had Robert on, which we got to get him back on again. Yeah. Robert Walker, he'll tell you as well. It was Leo Garibaldi that created.
Good one, Jack. Made almost enough to start. Let's see. I've been down the road so hungry, my backbone was talking to my neck. Rick Brooks, always liked the heel versus hero type of matches. Yeah, they were always good. Ole Anderson asked, what? I don't think it was Dave Messer, but it was one of them guys. He asked him, he said, who was going to be the baby face in a heel versus heel match? And the guy says, this is what he said to him. He said, the one they like the most. He says, you don't know nothing about wrestling. He said, it'll be the guy that backs off first.
Yes, exactly right.
He said, the guy that backs off first, right, he's the heel. And he said, you have no clue what you're talking about wrestling. So you think you know wrestling, and you don't. He said, why were we the heels? Because me and Gene backed off. He said, we wanted to be the heels. Michael Barr, Jack, I always enjoy your stories along with Ren Rodney's as well. So see, he wasn't even going to put our stories in there.
That's okay. It's all right.
Reckon how much Jarrett was skimming.
Well, we know $1 million home come out of it. So.
It's true. I've heard that line from a pro wrestler like it was run by the mafia. Yeah, it really was. The NWA definitely was. They drive in the territory on a Cadillac and leave on a gray.
No, Aaron, it's worse than that. Jarrett had a limousine and a driver.
Let me touch on the mafia thing for a second. I did a show for a mafia guy one time, and he was much nicer than any promoter that I ever worked with. Took me out to eat. I mean, it was nice.
To say that a promoter ever paid a wrestler what he was really supposed to get, that would probably be a fiction. I don't know that any. There was a few. Jim Barnett, I think, paid people what they were supposed to be paid. I don't think he did people wrong. I think Paul Bosch paid people what they were supposed to get paid. Did Bill Watts? I don't think so. I don't think he did, because he had a lot of sinking funds and kind of funds and this fund and that fund that came out before you got paid. So I've got one where somewhere I can show everybody the breakdown of some of the.
It was an amazing story that Terry Gordy, because we had a show in Salty Daisy, and I had mentioned about all the great houses they did for Louisiana, and it had the record for the Superdome and the whole 9 yards. And I said, y'all were doing good for Watts, wasn't you? And he said, well, yeah, he wasn't paying anything. What do you think we came to Georgia for? He said, we made more money working in Atlanta than we did working for Watts, and we were on those big houses in Louisiana.
Well, we've really talked a lot of crap tonight. I'm telling you right now. Y'all got y'all's $2 just tonight, and its own self. Maybe tomorrow will be a little bit
Michael
more
Barr said
uplifting.
Austin somebody was his name.
All right, guys. Appreciate it. We'll see everyone tomorrow night, and we will see. We will talk. We're going to go through some. We're going to go through some programs and stuff tomorrow night. Also, we'll make sure you got your top 95 or 90. It's getting late. It's getting late. Maybe I should just say good night, Gracie. I'll see y'all tomorrow night. Thank y'all so much.